Lily's heart woke early that Sunday, before the first light touched the sky. The little room she rented was cold, and the thin curtains moved with the wind that came through the broken window. She pulled an old gray shawl over her shoulders and whispered to herself that she must hurry before the morning rain came. Her hands were rough from long hours of sewing at the factory, but she handled the small bunch of flowers with great care. They were not bought from a store. She had picked them the day before in the field behind the bakery near River Street. Lily loved flowers because they reminded her that poor things could still be beautiful. She tied them together with a piece of thread and placed them in a small basket covered with paper. The town was still asleep as she stepped outside. Her shoes made soft sounds on the damp road. The stones were slick with dew, and a faint mist rose over the roofs. She passed the old bridge, the one that always creaked when carts rolled over it. She liked the sound of the river below because it made her forget the noise of sewing machines waiting. For her every weekday, the walk to Maplewood Cemetery took almost half an hour. Most people would find it strange to walk so far just to leave wildflowers on a stranger's grave, but Lily never thought of stopping. It had been 2 years since she first noticed that grave on a Sunday walk. It stood a little apart from the rest, under a tall oak tree with branches like long arms guarding it. The stone was simple and clean, with a name she did not know, but a date that caught her heart. The person buried there had been young, far too young to have left the world. Lily had been poor all her life, but she still felt lucky compared to the loneliness she imagined that grave carried. The thought of someone forgotten and lying there without a single flower made her sad. So she returned the next week, and the week after that. Soon it became part of her heart's routine. Every Sunday she brought flowers and cleaned the dust from the stone. Sometimes she spoke softly as she worked, as if the dead could hear her voice. She told little stories about her week, about the kind old woman in the bakery who sometimes gave her bread, about the young boys who mocked her old dress, about the songs she heard through neighbors' windows at night. Speaking to the grave made her feel lighter. She did not know whose grave it was, but she liked to imagine that the person resting below was gentle and kind. She never brought anything fancy, only the flowers she could find, yet her care made the place look loved. The townspeople often saw her climbing the hill with her basket and whispered among themselves. Some said she was odd. Others said she was mourning her forgotten lover. No one knew the truth, and Lily did not try to explain. For her, the grave was more than stone and name. It was a quiet place where she could rest her mind and feel that she still mattered in a world that moved too quickly for poor girls like her. That morning, the clouds were gray, and the wind carried the smell of coming rain. When Lily reached the cemetery gate, she stopped for a moment to catch her breath. She had not eaten breakfast, but she felt strong. The birds were awake now, jumping between the branches. The black iron gate was cool under her hand as she pushed it open. The noise of the town faded away. It was always so calm there that she could almost hear her heartbeat. She walked the narrow path between the graves until she reached the one she called her own. She knelt, brushed the fallen leaves aside, and laid down the flowers. The colors looked bright against the gray stone. The name still read clear, though moss began to creep around the edges. As she placed the flowers, she whispered, "Good morning. I brought fresh ones today." Her voice trembled a little. She sat for a while, thinking of how many people passed through life and were soon forgotten. Raindrops began to fall gently, but she did not run for shelter. The rain mixed with the tears she didn't know she was shedding. She smiled despite it. The world around her felt clean when it rained, as if even the sky wanted to share in washing away the dust of sorrow. Lily stood, brushed off her skirt, and told the silent grave she would come again next week. Then she turned toward the gate, unaware that in the weeks ahead, her quiet world was about to change because of another visitor who also came to that very same grave. She walked back through the narrow road with her empty basket. The town was waking now. Shop doors opened and people stepped out with busy looks on their faces. Lily kept her small, secret smile. No one knew why she walked to that grave every Sunday, and no one asked. But as she crossed the bridge again, she looked at the water below and thought that maybe kindness was like those ripples on the river. Small at first, but reaching far beyond where one could see. She kept that thought close to her heart as she disappeared into the morning mist of Maplewood. The next Sunday morning came slower and warmer than usual. The sky had a pale gold color, and thin clouds drifted gently above the town. Lily's heart rose before the church bells rang. She brushed her hair with her fingers, tied it back with a ribbon, and placed her little basket on the table. The flowers for that day were different. They were not wild flowers from the field, but ones given by Mrs. Bowen, the kind woman from the bakery who had said, "Take these, my dear. They need a good place to rest." Lily smiled gratefully and promised to bring back the basket later. The road toward Maplewood Cemetery was quiet again. The bridge creaked under her light steps, and the smell of fresh bread floated from the bakery behind her. She held her basket close to protect the flowers from the wind. The morning had a peaceful sound, the kind of silence that feels alive. Somewhere a dog barked, and a cart rumbled down the far side of the hill. Lily liked walking alone because her thoughts could move freely like leaves in water. When she reached the old cemetery gate, she felt a little chill even though the sun had grown warmer. The air at Maplewood always carried a strange calmness, like time moved slower there. She walked carefully along the narrow path, her shoes sinking slightly into soft ground. As she neared the familiar oak tree, she saw that the ground around the grave was already clean. That surprised her because she was used to tidying it herself. She frowned slightly, wondering if the caretaker had done it. Her breath caught when she noticed something else. There were already flowers placed neatly on the stone. Not wildflowers like hers, but white lilies wrapped in a fine paper that looked expensive. For a long moment, Lily just stood still, feeling a mix of confusion and hesitation. She looked around, but saw no one. The thought crossed her mind that someone else must have cared for this grave too. It made her strangely happy and uneasy at the same time. She knelt and placed her flowers beside the lilies. They looked humble next to the rich blooms, but Lily smiled and whispered, "Maybe you have more friends than I knew." The sound of footsteps behind her made her jump a little. They were firm, and even the sound of polished shoes on damp soil. She turned quickly, half afraid that she was not supposed to be there. A tall man was walking toward her. He was dressed in a black coat that looked like it belonged to someone important. He had dark hair with a few silver lines, and his face looked serious but not unkind. Lily stood, unsure what to say. The man stopped a few steps away and looked at the grave. His eyes softened, and for a moment he said nothing. Then he spoke in a low, steady voice. "That's my wife's grave too." The words froze in the air between them. Lily's fingers tightened around the basket. She felt her cheeks grow warm. "Oh, I am sorry," she said quickly. "I did not know. I only come here to bring flowers. I did not mean to upset anyone." The man smiled a little, though the sadness in his eyes did not fade. "You have not upset me," he said. "I only did not expect to see anyone here. No one has come for a long time." Lily looked down at the stone. "She must have been a very kind woman," she said softly. "I have always thought that someone kind was resting here." "She was," he said after a pause. "Her name was Grace. She loved the color white and believed flowers could speak." His voice faltered for a second. "It feels strange seeing another person here. You're the first in 2 years to stand by this grave besides me." They stood in silence, the wind moving gently through the oak branches above them. Soft, rustling leaves filled the quiet space between their words. Lily wanted to ask many things, but felt it would be wrong to pry. All she could manage to say was, "She must have been loved very much." The man nodded slowly. "Yes, more than I could ever say." He turned his eyes from the grave to Lily and asked, "Do you come here often?" "Every week," she answered. "Makes me feel peaceful." "I never knew who she was, only that her grave looked lonely. I hoped maybe someone somewhere might be pleased that she is not forgotten." For the first time, the man's mouth lifted into a faint, genuine smile. "Someone somewhere is indeed pleased," he said. "I should thank you for your kindness." Lily shook her head shyly. "There is no need for thanks." "It is nothing. It is not nothing," he replied. "My name is Ethan Cole." Lily repeated his name softly. "I am Lily Hart." The wind carried the sound of church bells up from the town below. Ethan looked back at the grave. "Grace would have liked you," he said quietly. "She liked gentle souls." Lily's heart ached at his words, not out of pity, but because she could feel the love still alive in him. She hoped he found comfort in returning here. Ethan bent down, touched the edge of the grave, and then straightened. "I will be coming again," he said. "If you do not mind sharing the quiet." "I do not mind," Lily said. They both looked one last time at the stone before turning toward the gate. The meeting had changed the air between them, leaving an invisible connection that neither could understand yet. Lily walked home with the empty basket again, thinking about the man who had thanked her for something simple. She did not know that what began as a habit of kindness had now touched another heart that carried its own secret ache. Rain had fallen all night, turning the streets into shiny ribbons under the weak morning light. The smell of wet earth hung in the air as Lily Hart made her way to work. She kept thinking about the man she had met at the grave. Ethan Cole, his calm voice and the sadness in his eyes stayed with her, like a quiet tune she could not stop hearing. She did not know much about him except that he had lost his wife, and that he seemed to carry a weight that made even his strong posture look weary. All day she sewed clothes for a shop in town, her hands moving fast, while her thoughts drifted away. When her friend Clara asked why she was smiling, Lily said it was nothing. Yet deep inside there was a strange warmth she could not explain. Meeting Ethan Ed made her feel connected to the person buried under that oak tree. It was as though the grave was no longer just a place of silence, but a meeting ground for two lonely hearts. Late in the afternoon, the sky cleared. Lily walked home past the bakery where Mrs. Bowen waved at her. At her small room, she placed her basket on the table and sat for a long time staring at the flowers she had picked the day before. She thought about Grace, the woman resting beneath the stone. She tried to imagine her face, her voice, and what kind of life she had lived. She wondered how she and Ethan had loved each other and what it must have felt like to lose such a love. She had lost her work once before when the family she was helping left the town suddenly. Grace's name might have been new to her, but the pain of loss was not. She remembered how it felt when she lost the baby she had looked after. The child had been fragile, yet full of light. Lily often thought that the baby had carried some of the sun within her. She could not forget the cry that morning when the accident happened. That family never returned, and Lily was left behind with a broken heart and an empty job. A few days later, she went again to Maplewood Cemetery. She found Ethan already there. He had arrived earlier and was standing quietly with his hands in his coat pockets. Lily greeted him shyly, and he nodded in return. Neither spoke for a moment. The sound of the leaves in the tree above them filled the peaceful silence. Ethan turned to her at last. "You bring color to this place. The wild flowers look brighter than anything I have seen in months," he said. She smiled a little. "They are not costly, but they stay fresh longer. That makes them better," he said. Grace liked things that lasted. She said beauty should live longer than its price tag. Lily looked at him, curiosity gentle in her eyes. She must have been kind. "She was," Ethan said softly. "She used to talk about making life warmer for others. Maybe that is why you being here does not feel strange." She believed in small acts of care. Lily felt her throat tighten. "I think I came because of that same feeling. I cannot do big things, but I can show a little kindness. I thought maybe someone might notice even if it was only the wind." Ethan looked at her as if he had never met someone who spoke that simply. "I notice," he said quietly. And Grace would have noticed too. He told her that Grace had been a teacher who loved children and that she had dreamed of opening a small art school. The accident had taken not only her life but also the life he had built around her. Since that day, Ethan had gone through his work like a man walking through fog. Managed a large company, spoke to many people, yet nothing touched his heart anymore. As he spoke, Lily listened without interrupting. Her heart ached for him, and also for Grace, whose dream had ended so soon. Then, almost in a whisper, Lily said, "I used to care for a small child once. I think she might have been your daughter." Ethan looked at her sharply, unsure if he had heard right. She continued in a soft voice, "I worked for a family for a short time. The mother's name was Grace. She had brown hair and a laugh like birds at dawn. There was a little baby with her, who had a tiny birthmark on her left arm." Ethan's face went pale. "That was her, my Grace and our daughter Ella. You knew them." Lily nodded slowly, her hands trembling a little. "I did. I looked after Ella sometimes while your wife was out. She was a sweet child. When I heard about the accident, I thought perhaps the child too had been lost. I never knew what became of her." Ethan lowered his head. "Ella lives with my mother. She is safe. though she hardly remembers her mother. He looked back at Lily with new eyes. So you are the one Grace spoke of. She told me about you once, the kind girl who sang lullabies in the kitchen. She said you had a heart made of light. The rain began to fall again, light and steady. They both stood beside the grave without speaking. It was as if Grace herself had brought them together, so that memory could heal a part of each of them. In that moment, the distance between wealth and poverty no longer mattered. There was only the shared space of grief, quiet and human, right there under the oak tree. The days after that meeting passed more quietly than before. Lily Hart woke every day with the image of Ethan Cole standing under the oak tree in her mind. It was strange to her that someone so wealthy and well-dressed would speak kindly to a poor seamstress like her. Yet each time she thought about his words, she felt a small warmth in her chest that grew a little brighter with every memory of their talks. Ethan, on his side, found himself glancing at the clock more often near the end of the week. His work at the large design company no longer gave him the same sense of purpose it once had. The tall buildings, the glass offices, and even the voice of his assistant seemed dull beside the thought of the quiet woman who left wildflowers on Grace's grave. He could not explain why, but her simple honesty had touched a corner of his heart that had been asleep for years. The following Sunday arrived with clear skies. Lily prepared the flowers as she always did, carefully wrapping them in paper. She fixed her hair in a neat braid and walked to Maplewood Cemetery with steady steps. When she reached the gate, she saw Ethan waiting by the path. He was looking down at the ground, lost in thought, with a small bunch of white lilies in his hand. When he noticed her, a faint smile crossed his face. "Good morning, Miss Hart," he said. "Good morning, Mr. Cole," she replied. "You came early today." "I did," he said. "I thought I should clean the stone before you came. I know you always do that." Lily blinked in surprise. "You did not have to. It was kind of you." "It feels right," he said gently. Grace loved when people took care of small things. They stood side by side as they placed the flowers. Lily brushed away a few dry leaves, and Ethan arranged the lilies neatly above the wildflowers. For a moment, the silence between them felt peaceful. The sunlight fell across the grave, touching the letters carved in stone. Ethan spoke softly. "It feels lighter here when you come." Lily looked down, unsure what to say. "Maybe the flowers help," she said. "The flowers in your heart," he replied, and he looked away quickly, as if afraid he had said too much. They began to talk gently about life. Lily told him about her work at the sewing factory and how her dream was to open a little shop of her own one day. Ethan listened with interest, not pity, which made her feel respected. He then spoke about his company and how he had built it from a small design office into a well-known firm. But even in his success, his voice carried a quiet sadness. "After I lost Grace," he said, "everything felt empty. I tried working more, but it only made the room quieter when I got home." Lily nodded. "When life hurts, we sometimes try to fill the space with noise. But the silence always returns until we listen to it." Ethan looked at her thoughtfully. That is something Grace might have said. As they talked, Ethan learned small details about Lily's life that made him admire her strength. She earned little, yet always found time to be kind to others. Mrs. Bowen told him once that Lily helped the children in the bakery read letters after work. Ethan felt both humbled and amazed at how someone with so little could give so much. Weeks passed and their meetings became regular. Sometimes Ethan brought warm bread for Lily, claiming he had too much at his house. Both knew it was an excuse to share a little comfort. Other times Lily brought small crafts she made at night. She gave him a tiny cloth bird one day and told him that it was a symbol of hope. He placed it in his office later, surprising his employees who had never seen him keep anything so personal. Each visit to the grave became less of a mourning and more of a quiet renewal. They still honored Grace, but now they also spoke about life's small joys, the scent of flowers and the gentle hum of the wind under the oak tree. Ethan found himself laughing again, something he had not done in years. Lily's voice, calm and plain, gave him a sense of ease that no words of comfort had managed to bring before. One afternoon, while leaving the cemetery, Ethan stopped and said, "Miss Hart, may I walk you home?" Lily hesitated but nodded. The road back to town felt shorter than usual. They talked about ordinary things, the weather, the bakery, the people in town, for a man used to luxury cars and business dinners. Walking through the dusty path beside a seamstress felt more peaceful than any meeting or party. At her small gate, she turned to him with a soft smile. "Thank you for walking with me. The gratitude is mine," he said. "You make this day feel lighter." He left with a strange happiness he could not hide. That night as he sat in his large empty house, he looked at the little cloth bird and thought about how peace could come from the simplest of things. Lily, in her small rented room, thought too about the tall man who had listened without judging her. Both of them went to sleep with the same unspoken thought that perhaps kindness had tied a string between their hearts, even if they had not meant for it to happen. The next Sunday, they would meet again beside the same grave, under the same oak tree, unaware that this growing friendship would soon lead them both to understand love in a new quiet way that neither poverty nor sorrow could destroy. Winter came slowly that year, turning the town pale with cold wind and soft gray skies. Lily Hart wrapped herself in her old shawl as she worked at the sewing machine from morning until evening, the hum of the needle mixed with her quiet thoughts. She had started saving every small coin she could find, hoping to buy better thread and open her tiny shop one day. Every time she grew tired, she thought of Ethan Cole and the calm way he listened when she spoke. Somehow the thought of him made her hands move faster and her heart feel warm, even in the chill. Ethan, too, felt the season differently. His office had tall windows that looked over the city streets. The workers in his building rushed and talked quickly, worried about sales and numbers. But Ethan's mind was far from his desk. He kept glancing at the small cloth bird Lily had made. It sat on the edge of his table beside the silver pen his wife once gave him. He used to think nothing could heal his loneliness, yet the memory of those Sunday mornings with Lily had softened the sharp corners of his grief. On the first Sunday of December, the sky was colored with the faint brightness that comes before snow. Ethan drove to Maplewood Cemetery, stopping by a small shop to buy a bunch of white lilies. As he parked near the gate, he saw Lily walking up the hill with her basket. She was wearing her worn wool coat, and her cheeks were red from the cold. When she saw him, her whole face lit up in a smile. "You still came even in this cold," she said. "I could not stay away," Ethan answered with a smile of his own. Besides, Grace never liked being forgotten in winter. They walked together toward the grave under the tall oak tree. The leaves were gone, and the thin branches waved in the wind. The ground was dry, but clean. Lily knelt to brush away a few twigs before placing her fresh daisies on the stone, while Ethan set his lilies beside them. The mix of wild and pure white flowers looked lovely together. After a quiet moment, Ethan asked softly, "You said last time that you wanted to start your own shop. Is that still your wish?" "Yes," Lily said, glancing up at him. "But wishes do not feed themselves. It takes time and work. I'm saving little by little." Ethan looked at her with kind eyes. "If I could help you, would you let me?" She shook her head quickly. "I cannot take money. People might think I am asking for pity." "I do not pity you," he said firmly. "I respect you. I only wish to see you reach your dream. You have given so much to others without asking for anything in return. Let someone stand beside you for once." Lily stayed quiet for a moment, the cold wind curling her hair against her face. Then she said softly, "If you wish to help, you may come sometimes to check my work. I could use advice, not coins." Ethan smiled. "Then advice you shall have." That small promise turned into something steady. Every few days, Ethan stopped by her little room to see what she was sewing. He praised her neat stitches and encouraged her when she grew doubtful. He introduced her to a woman in town who sold handmade fabric. Slowly, Lily's confidence began to bloom. Their friendship drew eyes in the town. Some whispered that a man like Ethan should not spend time with a poor seamstress. Others said it was kindness, plain and simple. But neither Ethan nor Lily cared much. They met often at the cemetery as before, sharing stories, laughter, and small lessons on life. One evening after work, Ethan found himself walking toward Lily's house without planning to. He saw through the window how she sat bent over her table, sewing by candlelight. The simple picture touched him deeply. He knocked gently, and she looked up in surprise. "Mr. Cole, what brings you here so late?" she asked. "I was nearby," he said. "I wanted to bring you this." He handed her a small box. Inside were bright threads in many colors. "For your shop one day." Lily covered her mouth. "They are beautiful." "Thank you." Ethan smiled softly. Grace would have liked seeing color fill your workroom. Lily touched the threads and said, "If Grace could hear us now, she might tell you that this kindness is her way of staying alive." Those words stayed with Ethan all night. For the first time since her death, he felt that Grace's memory was not lost, but living on through the care he and Lily shared. Winter passed slowly into spring. With Ethan's advice and her own effort, Lily began to sell her handmade cloths and small crafts. The bakery let her display them near the window, and soon people began to notice the work of the quiet woman with the soft smile. Her life began to brighten. When she next met Ethan at the cemetery, her hands no longer trembled with worry. She placed flowers gently and said, "This grave has changed my life." Ethan nodded. "It has changed mine too." They stood side by side, silent yet connected, the air between them carrying the slow rhythm of new beginnings. In that moment, Ethan saw that wealth could not buy peace, and Lily saw that kindness could create it. Beneath the same oak tree where sorrow once ruled, something gentle had begun to grow again, warmer than spring itself.